Auburn head basketball coach Bruce Pearl once again posts up on marching to madness. His Tigers are 8-1, currently number 2 in the AP Top 25 as they won the Maui Classic in defeating Iowa State, North Carolina, and Memphis after winning a hard-fought 74-69 decision in the Houston Rockets arena against those Houston Cougars. Coach, it's a monumental start right now for the Tigers.
Well, Ken, it's great to be with you. I've got a good group. I've got a veteran group, and I got a group of guys that really deserve to try to play against the best teams in the country and maybe have a special year. It was murderous row, but you know what, Ken? It's our start to our season playing like Houston, Iowa State, North Carolina, and Duke. That's going to be no difference than every single night in the SEC because it looks like our league might be as strong as any league in the history of college basketball.
That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing 9 top 25 teams this year. Ken Palm, though, has you guys ranked number 1 offensively and number 23 on defense, which is like in the top 1/8 in the country. Talk about the establishment of the connectivity of your offense and defense.
Well, that's great. I've got 2 great coordinators, Ken, that I work with. Mike Burgomaster is my offensive coordinator and one of my assistant coaches. He's got one of the brightest minds in college basketball. He's taken the system that Dr. Tom Davis helped me understand, and he's just enhanced it. And he's a great play caller. And then Stephen Pearl is my defensive coordinator and does a great job setting up defensive game plans and how we want to cover certain actions that hopefully will work against every opponent. And then I've got players that are bought in. We play with great effort and energy on the defensive end. Our guys recognize that our only chance to be successful is to guard and limit people to one shot. But also it's their best chance of continuing to play professionally. Coaches, it's hard for coaches to play guys that can't cover and that won't work hard defensively, that won't rebound their position. And I try to make sure my guys understand that every coach, whether they're from the NBA or over in Europe, are going to make sure that those guys can 3 and D a little bit. And as a result, our guys are bought in.
Of course, Johni Broome leads with 19.6 points, 11.9 rebounds in 30.2 minutes. His defense, though, with 2.8 block shots, 8.6 defensive boards, paints into his effectiveness on both ends of the floor. And for me, he's still an underrated player.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ken. I mean, he's just every year he has just proven people wrong, whether it be coming out of Tampa Catholic High School and not being able to play on the best AAU teams in the state of Florida, having to start his career at Morehead State. And all he's ever done is won. And the other thing, too, is he's a great athlete. He is not a big jumper, and people think just because you're not a big jumper, you're not a great athlete. Larry Bird couldn't jump over a line, but he was a great athlete. He's got great hands, great passing ability, ball handling ability. He's improved his perimeter, shooting, and he can get out there and guard. He can stay in front of guards. So, man, and then when I have him and Dylan Cardwell out there on the floor together, it really we're hard to score against because of the size that we have at the rim. And again, these kids have been unselfish. The other night we played a good Richmond team and they were double teaming him. And so what he did, he just threw the ball to the perimeter and he had 6 assists. And so when your best players play unselfishly like Johni Broome and Chad Baker-Mazara, it really sets the tone for the rest of the team.
What are the key reasons that my guy, Chad Baker-Mazara, I love his game. He's such a good kid. I met him last year when you guys won the tournament. He's shooting 58.7% from the floor. What have been the keys for that?
You know what? I don't know that I've had a player that gets it more than Chad, in the sense that he's got stuff that you just can't teach. He's been well coached throughout his travels, whether it be Duquesne or San Diego State or down in junior college. He's had great coaches every place he's been. And his father was a professional player and a coach. He just understands where he's supposed to be defensively. He's got long arms. He and Johni are 2 NBA prospects that nobody really talks about very much. And obviously, he can make tough shots. He can get to the foul line. Denver Jones is one of the best defensive guards in college basketball. People don't talk a lot about him. Look, we are a good basketball team because I've got really good players, and I don't know how many of my guys are on the draft board, but if we can continue to win and those guys continue to get exposure, I would expect to see some of those guys get some recognition.
Definitely deep as well, Coach. One of your deepest, I think, teams. Of course, you have Chad, Miles Kelly, and of course, Tahaad Pettiford. They formulate tough matchups as shooters on the perimeter, as does Denver Jones when you throw him in there.
Yeah, I mean, Miles Kelly is as good a shooter as there is in a country. He's got NBA length, and he's playing better defensively. His motor's running harder, and as the season progresses, I need him to continue to demonstrate that he also can be a great defender on and off the ball. And Tahaad Pettiford was, probably ranked one of the top 25 freshmen in college basketball, and he's clearly moved his way up into the top 10. It's a great class. Another example of a guy that wants to be coached. Another example of a guy with a great family. Travis Pettiford, Tahaad's dad, sent him to us to be coached by me and Ira Bowman and our staff because he wanted him to be held accountable. He wanted to be pushed. He wanted him to be loved. But they also knew that we've had success with undersized guards. But Tahaad does not play undersized. He's got unbelievable athletic ability. He could shoot the basketball, and I thought I was going to have to play him as a two guard all season long because he was such a scorer. And he's moved really nicely into that point guard position for us. He can get by you and break defensive down, and he's working to become a better defender. That's the biggest transition, Ken, from high school to college, is the understanding of guarding and the fact that you've got to be someplace on the floor at all times. You can't rest off the ball.
Yeah. Hey, it's a tough loss at Duke, but the way this team turned the page against a really good Richmond program, an excellent coach in Chris Mooney, it always paints, solid details about how maybe this team just can turn the page even off a tough loss like that.
Yeah, well, Duke did a great job. They're a great team. John Shire's a great coach. And they really did a lot of good things. We did not disrupt Duke at all with our defense, and that was not good. And we also fouled them too much, and we sent Cooper Flagg to the foul line too much. Maybe did a little too much switching. So there were some things that we didn't do as well as we needed to do to win the game, and yet we lost by 5 or 6 at Duke. So, that's a tough place to play, and they're going to be a tough out in the ACC. But you got to bounce back and get to the next one. And hey, the next one for us is Ohio State and Atlanta. And the Buckeyes are going to give us all we want. Got a good new young coach who's just doing a terrific job so far. And then it's Georgia State, and then it's Purdue and Birmingham, and then it's Christmas. And if we can win these last 3 games, it'll be a Merry Christmas. If we don't, then it won't.
Well, hey, former Auburn head basketball coach Sonny Smith was honored at the Richmond game as he retired from behind the mic. Now, he's the first college basketball coach I ever met, and that was about 40 years ago, and we've stayed in touch since, and I consider him one of my best friends.
Well, let me tell you something. That's because Sonny Smith is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. When I first came to Auburn, I'll add to that story. When I was at Southern Indiana in Division II, one of the things that I wanted to try to do was act like a Division I program, and so we had a big-time coaches clinic for high school coaches in Indiana. And I asked Sonny Smith to come and be one of our clinicians. And of course, the great coach at Auburn said yes. It's amazing what he'll do for $500. And but listen, it was just a way of Coach Spoonhour, Charlie Spoonhour, also showed up. 2 great men, 2 great coaches, 2 guys with great hearts. And I'll never forget Sonny for doing that for me when I was just a young coach getting started. And he did a great job as the voice of the Auburn Tigers with Rob Bramlett and Andy. And so it's time for him to come to the game and sit in his favorite chair and watch and not have to work.
Chaney Johnson and Chaney are also, consistent 3-point shooters. So how does that change the matchup so far when you start scouting how people play you, coming into a game?
Well, both Chaney and Chaney are matchup problems because they can do things on the inside and the out. I'd say Chaney, if Chaney was on a less talented team, he would be the leading scorer, the leading rebounder. He is so capable, and he is having a great year. and he's not putting up big numbers because he's unselfish and he recognizes we've got some really talented offensive players out there, but he's really important and he's really productive. He can guard any position on the floor, and he's going to have a great professional career. Chaney Johnson is my hardest worker. And it's funny when you say, coaches say that sometimes, you're best off to say, well, he's one of my hardest workers, because maybe there's somebody else on the team that's also working hard. And we are a team that does work hard. All of our guys are in the gym, in the weight room, getting extra, but nobody is working harder than Chaney Johnson, and our guys all know it.
Ja'Kai Howard came in for 22 minutes against the Spiders. How has the implementation back into your rotation potentially changed the way you can do things on both ends of the floor?
Well, Ja'Kai's really talented, and he's a great kid.
Yeah.
We had an unfortunate incident early in the season, which held him out for a couple of games, but then he wasn't in trouble after that. It's just the problem was we were in Maui playing all those teams, and then we go to Duke, and so there were 4 or 5 games in a row where I just couldn't put him out there and put him in a position where he wouldn't have success. And he stayed ready. He stayed right. He got caught up because he missed so many reps early in the season, and now he's a part of our regular rotation. He provides an incredible amount of athleticism and talent. His motor runs. He plays hard, and he can make some things happen on both ends of the floor. So I'm very proud of the way Ja'Kai handled the discipline, stayed right and stayed ready, and he's making a big impact on our team.
I noticed how Chad, in your post game, you mentioned that Chad gave up a few minutes there to let Ja'Kai play more. Again, that just shows to me what I thought last year when I first watched his 2 or 3 ball games early. He is so unselfish in so many ways, and he's dedicated to Auburn basketball. There's no doubt about that.
No question. And when you do things like that are selfless, and look, Chad wants to win, and our guys, they want to win, and they also are really good teammates. And so again, talk about showing leadership. Chad, we know we know Ja'Kai needs some reps to get caught up. Chad Baker had a great start to the game. He doesn't care whether he scores 20 or 12. He just wants to win. And again, that was just a really great teammate for giving Ja'Kai some extra minutes.
Last thing, Coach, I see why the fans at Auburn are called now the Auburn family. I covered Duke games for several years when I lived up in Charlotte. There was never a group of opponents' fans that showed up like those Tigers fans last week. They were generally 3 rows behind the bench, and boom, that's it. Auburn fans kind of show up to games unbelievable.
They really do, Ken, and it's the Auburn family. I look forward to the postseason. I'm going to ask John Shire if he would bless us with just a comment about what it was like to play in Cameron Indoor Stadium with a couple of hundred, maybe even approaching 1,000 fans from the opposing team. It's not a knock at all on Duke's, selling some of their tickets, but our fans are willing to pay whatever it takes, and that's one of the things about being at Auburn that is just different. We don't play a road game. We play in neutral sites because our fans travel, and that's just Auburn being Auburn, and that's a great separator for us. So our fans are excited about our program, and I'm blessed to be their coach. And Ken, it's always great to be with you. Nobody does it better than Ken Cross.
Thank you, Coach, and it's always a pleasure having you on, seeing you out at games and chatting some hoops.
Look forward to it again. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate your time.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.